Imhotep by the Greeks, Florida, 27th century BC, Egyptian. Emhtp***r Imhotep, meaning, the one who comes in peace, is with peace, was an Egyptian polymath who served under the 3rd dynasty King Djoser as chancellor to the pharaoh and high priest of the sun god, Ra at Heliopolis. He is considered by some to be the earliest known architect and engineer and physician in history, though two other physicians, Hezi Ra and Merit Ptah, lived around the same time. The full list of his titles is Chancellor of the King of Egypt, Doctor, first in line after the King of Upper Egypt, Administrator of the Great Palace, Hereditary Nobleman, High Priest of Heliopolis, Builder, Chief Carpenter, Chief Sculptor, and Maker of Vases-in-Chief. He was one of only a few commoners ever to be accorded divine status after death. The center of his cult was Memphis. From the First Intermediate period onward, Imhotep was also revered as a poet and philosopher. His sayings were famously referenced in poems. I have heard the words of Imhotep and Hordef, with whose discourses men speak so much. The location of Imhotep's self-constructed tomb was well hidden from the beginning, and it remains unknown, despite efforts to find it. The consensus is that it is hidden somewhere at Saqqara. Imhotep's historicity is confirmed by two contemporary inscriptions made during his lifetime on the base or pedestal of one of Djoser's statues, and also by a graffito on the enclosure wall surrounding Sekhenkhe's unfinished step pyramid. The latter inscription suggests that Imhotep outlived Djoser by a few years and went on to serve in the construction of King Sekhenkhe's pyramid, which was abandoned due to this ruler's brief reign. Attribution of achievements and inventions. Architecture and engineering. Imhotep was one of the chief officials of the pharaoh Djoser. Egyptologists ascribe to him the design of the Pyramid of Djoser at Saqqara in Egypt in 2611 BC. He may have been responsible for the first known use of stone columns to support a building. As an instigator of Egyptian culture, Imhotep's idealized image lasted well into the Ptolemaic period. The Egyptian historian Manetho credited him with inventing the method of a stone-dressed building during Djoser's reign, though he was not the first to actually build with stone. Stone walling, flooring, lintels, and jambs had appeared sporadically during the Archaic period, though it is true that a building of the step pyramid size and made entirely out of stone had never before been constructed. Prior to Djoser, pharaohs were buried in mastaba tombs. Medicine. Imhotep was an important figure in ancient Egyptian medicine. He was the author of a medical treatise remarkable for being devoid of magical thinking. The so-called Edwin Smith papyrus, containing anatomical observations, ailments, and cures. The surviving copy of the papyrus was probably written around 1700 BC, but may be a copy of texts written 1,000 years earlier. However, this attribution of authorship is speculative. Today the papyrus is on display at the Brooklyn Children's Museum, New York City. The 48 medical cases described within the Edwin Smith surgical papyrus concern 27 head injuries, 6 throat and neck injuries, 2 injuries to the clavicle, 3 injuries to the arm, 8 injuries to the sternum and ribs, 1 tumor and 1 abscess of the breast, 1 injury to the shoulder, 1 injury to the spine. Deification. 2,000 years after his death, Imhotep's status was raised to that of a deity of medicine and healing. He was identified or confused with Thoth, a god of architecture, mathematics, medicine and patron of the scribes. Having Imhotep's cult merging with that of his former tutelary god, he was also associated with Amenhotep, son of Harpu, who was another deified architect in the region of Thebes, where they were worshipped as brothers, in temples dedicated to Thoth, and later in Hermopolis following the syncretist concept of Hermes Thot, a concept that led to another syncretic belief, that of Hermes Trismegistus and Hermeticism. Imhotep was also linked to Asclepios by the Greeks. Birth myths. According to myth, Imhotep's mother was a mortal named Kerejuank, elevated later to semi-divine status by claims that she was the daughter of Bani Jadet. Alternatively, since Imhotep was known as the son of Ptah, his mother was sometimes claimed to be Sekhmet, the patron of Upper Egypt, whose consort was Ptah. According to another tale, his father may have been an architect named Canofa. Legacy. According to the Encyclopaedia Britannica, the evidence afforded by Egyptian and Greek texts support the view that Imhotep's reputation was very respected in early times. His prestige increased with the lapse of centuries, and his temples in Greek times were the centers of medical teachings. It is Imhotep, says Sir William Osler, who was the real father of medicine, the first figure of a physician to stand out clearly from the mists of antiquity. Descriptions of Imhotep by James Henry Breasted al. In priestly wisdom, in magic, in the formulation of wise proverbs, in medicine and architecture. This remarkable figure of Zosi's reign left so notable a reputation that his name was never forgotten. He was the patron spirit of the later scribes, to whom they regularly poured out a libation from the water jug of their writing outfit before beginning their work. Imhotep extracted medicine from plants. Imhotep was portrayed as a priest with a shaven head, seated and holding a papyrus roll. Occasionally he was shown clothed in the archaic costume of a priest. Of the details of his life, very little has survived, though numerous statues and statuettes of him have been found. Some show him as an ordinary man who is dressed in plain attire. Others show him as a sage who is seated on a chair with a roll of papyrus on his knees or under his arm. Later, his statuettes show him with a godlike beard, standing and carrying the ankh and a scepter. He is represented seated with a papyrus scroll across his knees, wearing a skull cap and a long linen kilt. We can interpret the papyrus as suggesting the sources of knowledge kept by scribes in the House of Life. The headgear identifies Imhotep with Ptah, and his priestly linen garments symbolizes his religious purity. Imhotep's dreams. The Upper Egyptian famine stela, which dates from the Ptolemaic period, bears an inscription containing a legend about a famine of 7 years' duration during the reign of Djoser. Imhotep is credited with having been instrumental in ending it. One of his priests explained the connection between the god Khnum and the rise of the Nile to the king, who then had a dream in which the Nile god spoke to him, promising to end the drought. Biographical papyrus. A demotic papyrus from the ancient Egyptian temple of Teb, Tunis, dating to the 2nd century AD, preserves a long story about Imhotep. King Djoser plays a prominent role in the story, which also mentions Imhotep's family, his father the god Ptah, his mother Kerejuank, and his little sister Renpet-Neferet. At one point Djoser desires the young Renpet-Neferet, and Imhotep disguises himself and tries to rescue her. The text also refers to the royal tomb of Djoser, by which the step pyramid must be meant. An anachronistic detail is a battle between the Egyptian and Assyrian armies where Imhotep fights an Assyrian sorceress in a duel of magic. In popular culture, in modern times, the historical figure lent his name to Imhotep, the title character of the 1932 film The Mummy and its 1999 remake, along with a sequel. Imhotep is a 1985 video game about building pyramids. Imhotep is noted in an episode of Stargate SG-1 where he is portrayed as a lesser Goa'uld posing as a Jaffa. In 2010 Marvel Comics series S.H.I.E.L.D., Imhotep was the man who formed the very first version of the titular intelligence organization.